Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me. And thank you to Liz for the invitation. It's always my privilege to be able to speak into people's lives and encourage you. And even though I am a researcher, and this is all based on my PhD and other research, I've tried to make it really practical for you so you have things to take away rather than simply me giving you theory. Um, as it is, I've just written a book on all of this. So the 30 minutes, sort of 35 minutes, is only just a taste of this. So if you need any more information, you're welcome to contact me and I can send you some more. So I've just tried to get the absolute essence of what I thought would help you the most. So to start off with, resilience is doing better than expected after experiencing risk. So it's better than expected. So I may have crashed the car and instead of deciding I'll never drive again and staying home being depressed, better than expected might be that I go get more driving lessons, I save money, and I buy a new car. And so, what we're wanting for our lives is not perfect. And I feel like sometimes the happiness movement, even though happiness is important, has made us feel like we should be perfect. But that's not resilience. Resilience is going through normal challenge. And sometimes we look at each other people and think, well, they don't have challenge, but I can assure you they do. And what you have to do is look at your own life and say, can I do better than expected in this situation? The other thing with resilience is that you aren't born with it. You aren't born with a superpower that, makes you invulnerable to things. That's what they thought in the 60s. It's something we learn and we get better at as we go along. So, what I want to do is show you some skills and some knowledge and some beliefs that will help you and your child to be resilient. But before we get started, I just want to give you a quick overview because you'll see this all of the time, these sort of shopping lists of skills that people need. And these are all really important. But what researchers were trying to do is work out, okay, what are the problems that people face that cause them to not be resilient? And what are the things that might save them? So let's just say I've got high intelligence, so that will help me be resilient. But what they found is there is no magic bullet. There is nothing particular to anyone who will actually, that will save them from like high risk. And a great example, and why I chose to do resilience, is I remember being at a group once and they were talking about single parent families and low socioeconomic families. And I said, oh, wait a minute, that's me. Like I come from a single parent family and we were really poor growing up. And they said to me, but you're different. And I said, well, why am I different? And nobody could answer it. And it made me walk away and think, why do some people, even though you don't have the odds stacked for you, you seem to have them against you, seem to make it, which is the basis of my PhD. So I interviewed adolescents who had been through serious risk and asked them, what changed your life? And this is what this is all is based on. One of the problems that I'm finding at the moment, and what you might hear is the cotton wool generation, is that what we're starting to see is everything is classified as a risk. And even during this COVID time, I've heard people at work say things like, the young people are traumatized because they can't go to school and they can't play with their friends. And I was like, oh, hang on a little minute. That's not traumatizing. Traumatizing is, losing your family members, dying from COVID. And we talk about things that are normal and a good challenge as a bad thing. So we need to change some of the language around what is a risk. And, you know, when we overprotect young people, what we're basically doing is saying to them, you are incapable of coping with this. So I'm going to remove it from you or I'll cope for you. And that's a really dangerous position to be in because what you're doing is undermining their ability to cope. But more importantly, you're undermining their ability to trust themselves. Like if mum or dad rushes in and saves them every time or takes the challenge away, then they don't think they're capable of facing it. And so I asked myself, is it threatening my safety? Am I at risk? Is this dangerous? And sometimes I feel like, sometimes I might have a lecture of 300 and I don't want to do it. I feel a bit nervous, but I'm not unsafe. And so I try to make myself step up. And the thing with challenge is you can only know with yourself and your own children is that there are time to push people into the challenge. So you can do it, you should do it, and there's time to step back. And I can't tell you what that is, But I can tell you that every time we step away from a challenge that's a good one, we're less likely to step up to the next one. And our world just gets really, really small. So the answer for resilience is not to remove normal challenge. We don't want young people doing risky things, dangerous things, but we do want them to be ready to cope as they become adolescents and adults. I've come up with a couple of analogies just to bring it all together and simplify it a little bit. So, talking about a backpack is all the risks you face. So, for me in my backpack, I might have parents, conflict, separating, things like that in there. And what I've started to realize is that what we do is we carry around past hurts, challenges, and risks, and they become heavy. So, no matter what resources I try and give you tonight, if you're carrying around things from the past, what happens is it holds you back. And when things come from a risk, when they come from the hurt, we don't always respond in a really thoughtful way. So it's really easy to fold things up. My boss might be bullying me or someone's ignoring me, one of my friends, and I might just fold it up and put it in the backpack and ignore it. And, that's a really simple way of dealing with risk and challenge. But the more we fold things up and the more we store them in there, the heavier that gets. And I'll show you some ways later on how we can manage some of those things. The second idea I have, which is like your protective factors, but not necessarily, is your bucket. So these are the things that you have gathered along the way, your resources. Now, not all the resources you've gathered along the way through life are helpful. You need to make sure that you challenge what's in there. And so when I look in my bucket of what I have, I think about things like I've got a great mum and I've got a really lovely family. I had a great neighborhood in Balcatta to grow up in. And so I'm really lucky to have some really positive things in my life. What we tend to do is we'll look at other people and think, well, I don't know why you're behaving that way. It seems like I would do this. Why aren't you doing that? But everyone has grown up with different experiences. And what you have to do is rather than think, I wish I was like this, you got to think, what am I missing? What didn't I pick up along the way? And one really, like, there's so many things like emotional regulation. So being able to self control. That's not born with, that's learned. So if you have trouble with self control, that's not something that you just go, oh, well, never mind, I can't do it. It's like, okay, I need to work on this. Some people don't have great social skills. Again, that's something you can work on and you can add it. So rather than getting mad at yourself or your child because they don't seem to be able to master something, I try to think about when I'm working with kids is what do I need to put in their bucket? Because disciplining someone for doing the wrong thing is one way of approaching a problem, but usually they will, if we reteach it, it's a much better strategy. So I'm going to show you just 5 quick ways to fill your bucket. Go fast through there. Take care of your physical health. Now, these things, I don't even need to have them on the slide. I was double checking whether I should even put them in there. They're so obvious and you would have heard them 100 times. And I should have number 6 is exercise. But the thing is, we don't do it. And these are really basic things that keep our body functioning. And just the one point I want to make here is physical health affects mental health and your capacity to cope. So if you get up in the morning and you drink 3 coffees, you feel irritable, you're anxious, and you can't focus, it's not a psychological problem. And sometimes what we're doing is we're living unhealthily and we're feeling depressed or we're feeling anxious or we're feeling out of control, but it's actually a physical problem. So make sure you take care of your physical health and then work from there. The core of my research, I said to them, there was no research like this. All we knew was that list of factors I showed you was what made you change your life. So why did you decide to be resilient? Why did you overcome the things? And every single one of my participants said, when I decided I was worth it. So then I started to probe a little bit and ask them, well, what does that mean? And they said, I decided that my life was worthwhile, that I had value. And the really important part here is that you matter. Like you matter, your child matters for no reason. And it's not because you got the job interview or because you got the promotion or you drive the flashy car or they got an A grade. Those are things that are nice additives to life. But having someone in your life that believes you matter and that accepts you for no reason is one of the core reasons people can overcome things. It's almost like this stake in the ground that, and for me, always been my mother. Is I go back to that and I think I've got that firm ground that I know that she knows that like she values me, which is really important. The idea, think about a car, like you got this Jaguar, you go out, you polish it, you love it, you vacuum it, you park it in the shade, and it's valuable, so you invest in it. But maybe you've got, and apologies if you have an old Hyundai 1985 and it's rusty and it's not worth anything and you don't put any effort into it. And it's the same with your young person, and it's the same with you. When you start to value you or them, people want to invest in themselves. And I've seen this with so many clients. Once they get the revelation, like I'm worth something, like I do have value, they start to chase down things and start to try to fill the bucket themselves. The problem with value is we get it from the wrong place in our society. So young people are getting it from social media. It's like, how many likes did I get? And who commented on my picture? And how many friends? And do I have the right sneakers? And one of the groups I work with, one of the year 6 boys said, the thing with using clothes or things is once I take my sneakers off, I'm no longer valuable. And I thought that was a really beautiful way of remembering that value has to be on really healthy things. And I'll show you a couple coming up in the next few slides. So one of them is liking yourself. And we all have this massive range, and your kids will have this massive range of who they are. They will be loud, funny, quiet, a little quirky in different things. And I found that if you can love, and the kids said to me in my interviews, if you love the individual, you love who I am, and you see me and you accept that, then I feel valued. And so rather than trying to get this beige version of everyone, I love seeking out things. Like when I drive to work, I think, what good can I find in people? And I ask the teachers to be treasure hunters. Go look for good. It's so easy to find fault in your children and fault in yourself. But go find good, because that is a good place to build strength and build the relationship with your child and with yourself. There's heaps more there, but I'm going to run out of time very quickly. So build appropriate connections. In my life, I'm on a few boards. I lecture about 1,000 students in a week. I can run into 2,000 people, not literally run into, but social connections are so important to us. They give us encouragement, love, they give us kindness, acceptance, and so on, support. But what I was doing was trying to connect with everybody. And one time I was talking to my friend and I said, oh, there's 2 students at university that don't like me. And they said to me, do you really expect all 1,000 of them to like you? And I said, yes, of course I do. And they said, that's the most ridiculous thing I've heard. And then after I said it, I thought, yes, that is a ridiculous thing as well. So what I teach young people, and it works brilliantly, I usually draw it, but I can't here, is we have inner space and outer space. So inner space is about 5 people that we share with, that can speak into our life, that can just talk about, things we need to improve on. They're unconditional. And then outer space is everyone else. So it might be people I play volleyball with, people I work with, and I might have coffee with. So they're friends, but they don't have the same kind of close impact on my life. They're not allowed to. And I kind of imagine it like sometimes arrows fly, but I've got kind of this, and this works for kids too. It's like I've got this force field and they don't have a right. They're not in my mind. They're not in my inner circle. They're not in my inner space, and they don't have a right to have that sort of say in my life. And it really helps me to be a lot more stable with lots and lots of connections that you have. Second thing with appropriate connections, especially with your children and your wife or your partner or whoever it might be, is to be intentional. Sometimes we want relationships and we miss them, but we don't put them first and we don't set time aside. If you really want something, you have to make time for it. So take your daughter on a date, take your son on a boy date, like pizza, basketball, whatever is their thing. Ask them, what would you like to do? Let's set some time aside, because it's those shared experiences that kids come back to and use as something that, yeah, dad cares about me. I know I matter because he did this. So make sure you prioritize them if they matter to you. Not everyone's great at relationships. Again, we're not born good at relationships. So go invest, go get a book, Bolton's book, People Skills, or Covey's book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. Go develop some of those things in you, because, like, for me personally, I'm super shy and it's something I am working on. I reflect on, I get feedback on different parts of, how to make small talk is not one of my strengths. I'm very task oriented, but it's okay. You're not meant to be perfect. You can work on it. Now, mastery is a really relevant one if you've got young people who are at school. So mastery contributes to work because there's a sense of I have control over things. I can create something. I can learn. I am capable. And so with mastery, the biggest thing here, the only thing I really want to highlight is that it takes failure. And we're not very good at having failure in our life. And it's funny because I say this, and then the other day I made a large error and I was mad at myself like all day. And then I sort of laughed and I was thinking, of course, because you're doing something new, you will make mistakes. It's actually normal and you need to give yourself a pass out here too. So I'm not talking about failure where you've not tried or you don't care or you're being sloppy. I'm talking about having a go and not getting it right the first time. So there was one parent I was working with, a daughter who had major psychological issues, she's grade 3, and she was just desperate for her mother's attention. And I said to her, why don't you just, and mom said, I'm too busy. I'm just too busy. And again, prioritize the things that are important to you. And I said to her, well, what about if she helps you cook dinner? Maybe you could do that. And she said, oh, no, like, you should see my house. It's perfect. There's not even one bit of lint on my mat. And I said to her, would you be proud of your mat in 10 years or will you be proud of your daughter? And she just said to me, oh my goodness, I cannot believe what I just said. And it was just a revelation that we try and sometimes have these tidy, perfect lives, but that's not living. Like, living means that we have to take chances and we will make mistakes. And it's about debriefing, reflecting. You forgot your homework. Oh, well, I didn't save you. I didn't bring it to the school. What do we do next time? It's not necessarily discipline, it's reteaching. I've had kids in year 7 who are functioning at a year 2 level, and the pride they feel when they master something, even at that level. It doesn't matter what level you're at, it's having your own journey. So, side point, don't compare your kids to each other. They don't need that. Coping is another thing we are not born with. My coping skills really started with avoidance, followed by avoidance, and then avoidance. So my backpack was probably chock a blocks. My strongest memory is in grade 5 of not handing in a train assignment because I didn't have anything to write it with, and I just avoided it for like 6 months. I've had to learn that that's a very annoying picture, but that's not the way to do it. And so I'm going to go forward. I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to talk about coping while that's not flashing around. 2 things. Feelings are good. And I was just talking to someone at the park, and it's like, it's so important as men and as young people and families to know that you've got to feel things. So a feeling is fine. And what I say to young people, you don't want to set up a house and live there in the feelings. You want to set up a tent. So sit there with your child, sit there and by yourself, go and sit there and feel it and think it and go through it, and then move on. And then the feeling will come back again and you might need to process a little bit more. But the key thing with coping is that you need to feel things before you think about things. So thinking doesn't work when your feelings are elevated. And so if your child's frustrated and upset and angry, this is what I used to say, I need to talk to you right now. But they can't because their feelings are overwhelming. So make sure that you let the feelings pass and then go on and do the talking afterwards. Coping, if you don't know how to cope in effective ways, go read on it. Things like write a list, pick the best part of the list, think about the outcomes of, what might happen. So problem focused coping is a skill that we need to develop as well. And that's not something that kids do naturally. And they need you to scaffold through what might happen potentially. Another part of filling your bucket is practicing gratitude. So this is so much research around this. It's changing your focus from what's going wrong in your life to thinking about what's going right. So each day thinking about 5 things. You can read, there's so much online about gratitude. It's one of the most helpful things you can do. But grace is about sometimes letting the stuff out of our backpack. So the grudges, the things that make us angry, our past that's holding us back. So let me take you through that. So the past keeps us stuck. So I had a friend say to me recently, I'm just an angry person. And I said to them, you don't say that to a psychologist. I said, no, you're not. I said, you're angry because, and I know what's happened in their past, but what they'd done was fold it up and put it in their backpack. And that drives your behavior. So you think, well, I'm not thinking about it. That's the past. But the past lives well and truly in us until we rip it out and get rid of it. So you might feel like, my brother told me I was useless when I was young. This is not true for me. And now I run a large company, but I never feel good enough. It lingers like this bad smell. So we don't want old risks to drive our future. So what do we do with them? What do we do with the things? Number one is you acknowledge. And what you do is when things go wrong, so when you get upset, something makes you angry or frustrated, think, okay, what's going on here? What am I feeling and why am I bothered by this? Because if you don't manage it, if you just fold it up and put it away, then you won't be able to recognize it and overcome it and be resilient. So take the time and space you need to process things that have happened. Uh, Last year, something really bad happened or difficult for me at the beginning of second semester. And I didn't have time to deal with it at that point. So I folded it up and put it in my backpack and I got it out in January. So it wasn't that I'm not going to deal with it ever. It was that I know now's not a good time. At the moment, there's a lot going on with COVID and changes. So it doesn't mean that, you have to go back and pull out your past and go through it now. But it might be that you start to think about some things that may be affecting you and the way you parent. So then don't start stuffing more stuff in as you start to deal with things. The things that I'm starting to see in myself is that when things happen and I feel my feelings are my flag. So you're like, okay, I'm annoyed at such and such. I feel uncomfortable. I'm angry. I'm resentful. It's like, what's that triggering in me? Because what you need to do is change the pattern of your life. And you start, these patterns just are automatic. And you're like, I'm always going to fail. I'm always going to do this. I'm always going to have arguments with such and such. You always are if you don't address why that's happening. So take a step back and have a think about, okay, why is this happening? What can I do differently? Do I need to add something to my bucket to change my strength? It's really easy to blame other people. Yes, your boss, your mother, your brother, your sister, or your dog may have caused the problem today for you even, but it's our responsibility. And I'm not saying you need to forgive and forget. Forgiveness is a really powerful thing to let go, but it is up to you with what you do with it now. And the unforgiveness shoved into your backpack is one of the biggest things that makes people stuck. And if you don't somehow process what happened, again, you don't have to let them back in your life or anything, but holding on to that sort of toxic poison of unforgiveness will keep you stuck there. Resilient people are ones that say, it might not be okay what you did, but I'm not going to be a victim to what you did. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to have the life that I want and not be party to what your decisions were. The other one is don't put other people's things in your backpack. So this is particularly for parents, is that your child's problems are not yours. And it's really easy to carry the things and try and be responsible for them, but it's not your burden to bear. And there's really great research showing that when you try to carry other people's burdens, you actually burn out because we're actually made quite well to carry our own problems and solve our own problems. And one of the parents I was working with, she's like, it just seems so mean to not fix everything for my child and hold all that. And I said to her, it's actually mean to do it because A, you're going to burn out, but B, they're not responsible for their lives. And always thinking about, all right, so what do we want our young people to be as an adult? And what do I need to do to make sure that I'm creating an adult here that can rely on themselves, that can trust themselves? So while they're not your problem, you might take them through steps on how to process it. So one of the things is like you'll see a young person come in and they'll be so angry. And my first response would be, well, that's wrong. You shouldn't be angry. And they talk about positive emotions and negative emotions. And I think that's wrong in itself as well. Like all emotions are there to teach us that we've got a reaction to something. So it's like, all right, don't discipline like, don't encourage them to like smash holes in things. You know, there's behaviors that go with emotions as well. But it's quite okay. Anger is fine. Why do you feel angry? What's going on? Talk me through it. What happened? Why did you feel like that? And then help them unpack that. So you're scaffolding them, but you're not taking that off them. All right. So, what does this mean for you as a father or a mother if you're listening on the side? You need to look after yourself before you look after your children. As a teacher, I just found that if I'm in a bad space, I have nothing to give. And my bucket of resources, if I've got avoidance in my bucket as my coping strategy, then that's what I'm going to pull out and give to my children and to the people that I'm working with. So I've got to add to what I know. And I've got to challenge myself when I've got faulty thinking and faulty responses to stuff. But you've also got to like decide that you are worth it. And what I see is people, adults who don't look after themselves, who don't care for themselves, who let people walk all over them and don't value yourself. Like you are a unique person who is made the way you are. And it's like you need to like grab hold of that in your own mind, not because people tell you you are, not because I tell you necessarily, not because you're brilliant at anything, just because you are. When you get a grip of your own value, it's much easier to start to give it away. And what I see when I see kids that are bullying or I see adults that are bullying, I see someone with really low self worth. And what they're trying to do is, I'm going to make you worse than me because I feel so rubbish about myself. And like, that's just I feel sorry for them. It's a faulty way to go. So invest in yourself, have good boundaries, keep learning yourself, keep really solid relationships outside of the children and your family, and make sure that you are filling your bucket with things that maybe you didn't get when you were growing up. Your past and your present will drive your parenting, even if you don't acknowledge it. So thinking about one of the really cool things that comes through is we are all looking for validation. And rejection in childhood is one of the biggest problems across the board for where I see like really people that are non-resilient. And it's like we're constantly seeking the validation we didn't get when we were a child. Now, when I say validation, I don't mean you say to your child that everything they do is perfect. That's the worst self esteem movement in the world. It's like I did this really dumb drawing. And it's like, well, that's amazing. You're the most amazing. I'm not saying that. You're not validating things they do. You're validating them. And it might be, you know what? You've done the wrong thing here, but I want you to know that I love you and that's never going to change. And maybe you didn't get that, but you can give that to your child and you can give that to yourself. Manage challenges in the family by facing them. So maybe you sit around the dinner table and you talk things through. People don't walk off and slam doors. And if they do, they've got to come back and you got to sit through and talk when you're ready. We don't have to go through every single problem in detail, but when you've got things going along where people are not coping and not managing, and you can see that your child doesn't have a system for sorting things through, then work out a way. One of the really good strategies, particularly with boys, is playing basketball with them or going for a walk or going for a drive. For some reason, or I used to roll out a bit of IKEA paper, big roll of it, and draw at the same time with girls. For some reason, not making eye contact and talking through things can be a really helpful way. So think about, what can I do to increase my protective factors? How can I invest in my family, my relationships, having good boundaries, having good relationships? And then those things, when you fill your bucket and start to deal with some of the issues and challenges as they come up, you'll start to see that you can be resilient as a family.